What's up? Welcome back to The Obvious Choice. We have a very rare episode. We have a guest today, the one and only Adam Bornstein. Now, Adam, I want to start with a story. And the story goes back to 2018. We were in Vail, Colorado together. You were hosting an event called 212, which I still say the 212 events were the best professional events that I was at. And they weren't fitness events, they were business events. You brought in, really some of the top people in the world, and we're going to talk about some of that. But you and I ended up like taking the bus to the place that we were going to together that night. I don't remember why, but we were sitting beside each other, even though you were organizing the whole damn thing. And we were at the bottom of the mountain, and he's like, "All right, cool, we're going up there." And you had like basically rented a mountain, and we were going on a private ski lift up to the top. And there was, I guess it ended up there being a restaurant at the top of the mountain, and you would like rented the whole thing. And I remember looking at you and just saying, "There's no fucking way you're making money on all this." Talk to me about your mentality behind organizing those events.
Yeah. Didn't make much money on that. So you weren't far off. Some money. I believe that all businesses should be profitable, right? A joke that if I could just name all my businesses, I would just name them profitable, because that is the goal. Uh, I have a very simple value system, and I use that as kind of my, I guess, framework for everything that I do, events or otherwise. And that is, I value people and I value experiences, because I think that if you are around great people, you will have great experiences. And if you create or are involved with great experiences, you will probably meet great people. And from those two foundations, I think a lot of good can happen in terms of business, in terms of self improvement, in terms of satisfaction and happiness and just enjoying yourself. And when you're in that type of ecosystem,
Right.
good things tend to happen, right? So you can try and manufacture and do everything, or you can do the most simple, basic thing in the world, which is help people connect with good people or give people a good experience and let everything flow from there. So when I come to putting on an event, that was it. Those were the only questions. And a lot of times it meant doing things that were not economically the most efficient, but were optimized for helping people connect with other good people and giving people
Yeah,
a good experience.
yeah, because your events were quite a bit smaller than a
They
lot of
were
the other ones. There was
65 person cap, everything personalized, right? Like all the schedules are personalized. No two people have the same exact schedule. Go and do
Mhm.
it at like really fancy hotels, make everything inclusive. If you would show up there, your food, the experiences, all of it is taken care of. And that was also like, I think the bigger the event, the more money you can make. The bigger the event, the less personalized, the less connection, the less connection, the less fulfillment, the less fulfillment. Are you really actually meeting those good people and having those good experiences, right? You can take this from so many different ways. And when you unravel the
Mhm.
onion, it's just like what causes these things to fall apart, because sometimes like bigger doesn't necessarily mean better.
Well, so that was one of the things that jumped out because at that point I was attending a lot of professional events, people from different industries, like business communities, and I was in a number of different ones. And what I found out after being at that first one of yours, and I went to one of the other one, I think you hosted three, I went to two out of the three, was was how much more I got out of yours, and how much more connection there was with the other attendees. And of course, the other attendees were also the other like mentors as well,
Right.
because they hung around the entire event. Whereas often people will fly in and fly out if they're the quote unquote famous people. But the reason why I wanted to bring up that is the more I think about, how long I've known you, I think 2011,
It's been
2012,
a while now. Yeah.
it's been a long time, and we'll talk about kind of the beginnings of it. But the more I think about like this single line, which is dig the well before you're thirsty. Like to me, so much of what you do is you make these connections and you give so far in advance. You're the guy behind the guy for so much of the information that's been put out in this world. I mean, most people are getting to know now the work that you're doing with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But you've been doing this work with Arnold Schwarzenegger for a long time. I mean, you were the guy who started his fitness site.
Correct.
In
Yep.
what year was that?
That would have been 2010, 2011. Yeah.
Okay, so 2010, 2011, you started Arnold Schwarzenegger's fitness site. You've been working with him on and off alongside Daniel Ketchel, who I think his
Yep.
special title is Chief of Staff for
He is
Arnold. Is
chief
that
of
right?
staff for Arnold. Yep.
So he's the Chief of Staff. So alongside Ketch. And then you were Tim Ferriss's, de facto chief marketing officer for 4 or 5 years. So you helped launch
Right.
Tim's podcast. You basically ghost wrote some of his books.
Yeah. So I help with Tools of Titans. I help with Tribe of Mentors. We did Tim Ferriss show. We did Fearless. So 2 of his TV shows,
Oh,
2 of
yeah,
his
that's right.
books, podcast, all of that fun stuff. Tim had his hands in lots of media.
He did a lot of different things. And then you were also behind Livestrong, Demand Media,
Correct.
which at that time, before it completely blew up, it was one of the biggest fitness websites in the world.
It was the biggest at one point.
Was
So I
it
was
the
at
biggest?
Livestrong for 2 years, and we had 44 million unique visitors per month at its peak. And this
Right.
was post Panda update, which for a lot of people is jargon, but in the early 2010s, Google made a big update to try and get higher quality content, which essentially punished these content farms that was just
Right.
creating as much content as possible. They got spanked very, very hard.
Oh, they
Things
got
kind of
killed
fell
because
apart.
they were the worst.
They were the worst,
They
without a
were the
doubt.
worst offenders in
They were.
that by far.
Google made an algorithm to kill content farms, and the only content farm was Demand Media. Okay, and they did
I
it
remember.
better
I
than
remember
anyone.
what they did. I
What did
remember
they?
somebody telling me that they had programmed the spider on the net that would basically all day, every day algorithmically go and find keywords. And then it would spit that keyword back into this like big list that this massive pool of writers would just pull from. And it was entirely automated. And the writers would get paid like $25 a pop
It
and
was
just like
it was
fire these.
brilliant
Yeah.
for how Google rewarded content. So very, very similar, right? There was a machine that would go ahead and ingest and turn keywords into title queries. People, they had then like a farm of writers who would pump
Right.
these things out. And I come in there not even realizing, right? Yeah. So I was, fitness editor, nutrition editor for Men's Health for about 4 years.
Right.
And I leave Men's Health to go become, editorial director of Livestrong. Right at this part where they're big, but they've just received this spanking, and I'm like, yeah, to me, it's like it's just such an ambitious opportunity of like, well, how can we go ahead and make this like great? But I didn't realize what I was getting into, right? Because like you can see the car and you can see that it was in a crash, but you can't see what's under the hood. And you get under the hood and you realize that like the depths of the content, guys, there was like 675,000 articles,
Yeah.
and the vast majority of them were terrible. The vast majority of the writers were terrible. So I have 2 things to do. 1, I need better writers, and 2, I need better content. But in order to have better content, I need to know what content is not good. So I would just be sitting there for the first couple of months just reading all of these articles. And a lot of them are A, terrible, or B, it's because it's based on search queries. It's like, what exercises can I do to become taller? Right? Like, can I take horse pills to make my penis bigger? And
Right.
it's like some of the stuff that were truly published articles on Livestrong was so bizarre that like part of the time you're laughing because it's hilarious. And then like people trying to spin real content of this. Imagine the person trying to like write the $25 article on the exercises you can do to make yourself taller. I'm obviously reading this very intently because I'm like, wait, can I be taller? Have I been
Oh
wrong
yeah.
all of these years? What
Every
is the secret?
as a fellow short Jewish guy, I'm with
Right,
you on
as
that.
as part of the like the captains of the short Jewish,
Yeah.
fitness pros of America or Canada, North America, right? I'm just like, oh my god, fascinating. And no, it was ridiculous. It was terrible. So you go ahead and you comb through all of this content, and you're literally having to take down hundreds of thousands. I was reading to the point that I just wanted to cry because my eyes were burning. And then you're like, well, I need to assess these writers. I'm not going to assume everyone's bad. So you put together a writing test to see, like, in this huge bullpen of writers,
Yeah.
like, are any of them good? And it's just like, hey, we're going to put together a test. We need to like kind of refresh this. And like when I say I like fired like 1,000 writers in a day, because like none of them could like pass just a basic writing test.
Right.
And it was like so egregious that I think I can talk about it now. I wasn't supposed to for a while. There was like a site that was built like Adam Bornstein is a fucking asshole.com, which was created by the
Because you
demand
just
media
fired
writers,
all of these
which like,
writers.
yeah, it was like a mass fire it and like legal got it taken down. And I'm like, I remember being like
Yeah.
sad, but also proud. Have I made it that like there's a, my name is attached to a fucking
You took so
asshole.com?
many $25 away from these
Oh
people.
my
And
goodness.
they
And I
just
was like, we
couldn't
got to
stand it.
rebuild this, right? But I tried to get like the best writers and I tried to like pay them really well and I tried to bring an
Yeah, Livestrong
advisory.
paid pretty good for a while. That's you
Yeah.
brought me in. I think probably around that time, and I remember you were. I think you were the first person to pay me like 200,
Yeah.
$250 an
I was trying
article.
to give people anywhere like 200 to 300 per article and we were trying to stretch
Yeah,
it for features and I wanted to get good people, good content because I felt that there's a I still feel the same way. It's part of like why I wrote book recently. There's a social responsibility to provide good health information in an ecosystem that is like geared and slanted towards bad health
right.
information. Then people will read this stuff, take it as gospel, apply it to their life, and be left worse off than we found them. And that sucks. I hate that. That's been like my mission for the last like 15 years. And I realized, we're talking about this. Like, I realized that I could take this from the vantage point of like, it's got to be about me. Or I realized that I could like work with industry or create businesses that allow people to be in a position to have more eyeballs on them. And I asked myself, which did I think would have a bigger impact? Would it have a bigger impact in terms of fostering and supporting and building businesses that could reach lots of people in different pockets? Because I don't think that, there's not one person for everyone. Or can I go and just say, like, this has to be about me? And I realized a long time ago, it didn't have to be about me. I was completely happy being a ghost or invisible as long as I would do good work, as long as the people that I worked with, whether you love me or hate me, at least you respected me and respect the way I go about it, or respect the way I treated you. That was going to leave me more fulfilled. And that was going to leave a much bigger impact on the industry overall, which was kind of all I
Okay.
really cared about.
So that all sounds nice, but I want to challenge you on that.
Challenge me away.
How can you possibly not crave the ego satisfaction of people not knowing that you were a part of something that was big?
Because I have very, very few people whose opinions I actually give a shit about. And, I grew up, I will say this, I'm a byproduct of like 20 years of therapy, and I'm married to a therapist. Mental
Gotta
health
do
is
it.
really important to me. I used to try and make everyone happy. And it's because I was just like, there was like too much inbound of whose opinions mattered to me. And it made me really sad and really miserable and too vulnerable to like working in a space where like you're always going to be criticized, right? There's no one who can play in this space and not be criticized. So you can do a few things, right? You can say you're immune to that criticism, which I don't think anyone's immune to that criticism. You can say that you don't care about doing things that make people proud, but we all want to be proud. Or you can say that there are a few people whose opinions matter, and most of the people, it's not that they don't have a valuable opinion, it just does not matter. And I created a very, very small circle of people that I wanted to make proud, whose opinions matter a lot. And if they are disappointed in me or if they don't think I'm doing something cool, it hurts. It hurts too much, actually, but it's a very, very small circle. And everyone else, like if they think I do great work or not, like it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, I still got to look at myself. Like I still got to look at my wife. I still got to look at my kids. And it's like I can go around chasing that stuff forever. And I want to be successful. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a good life. But like I didn't get a high out of that stuff, right? And I had a taste of that before. I have been in front of the camera before. I have had that role. And what was waiting for me there wasn't all of that fulfilling. I truly
When did that
enjoyed
happen?
um probably after engineering the alpha, and maybe some of that was about like who I was associating with during that time and
Which
how
came out
they took
when?
that.
When did Engineering come out? Engineering the Alpha was your
20
first book. Was it one that?
2012, 2013. It was not. So that was my first book ever was done
Oh,
with
you.
Todd Durkin, Impact
I have
Buddy,
that one.
in 2009.
I have that one.
Yeah, and then I did the men's health diet, the women's health diet, uh, big book of abs for men's health and women's
Yeah,
health. And yeah, we did some like
The Big Book of Abs was the first men's health publication that I was in.
you were in that book. Yes.
I was one of the workouts. I remember you're like, okay, I need a workout for the Big Book of Abs. I'm like, I don't know what an ab workout is. You're just like, just, I,
Just give me a good workout, John.
Just give me a good
Give me
workout.
a
It'll
good
work the
workout.
abs.
What's an abs workout? Everything's an abs workout. But
Everything's an
title of
abs
the
workout.
book.
This is the easiest book to write ever. Everything is an abs workout. Just give
everything's
me a
an abs
goddamn
workout.
workout.
Don't overthink this,
I
John.
need to
Come on.
finish this stupid book.
Yeah, around then I just realized that it wasn't what I thought. It was probably similar on the time that I decided to leave LA. LA definitely made me money hungry.
But what do you mean that you were in the spotlight as a result of that book, though?
It was a bestseller. I got to go on like TV. I got to do stuff and like surround myself. I started finding myself around a lot more athletes and celebs and working with them. I got to train some celebs, and you get eyeballs on you, or you have like you're walking around and people are taking cameras of you and you're showing up on like E and random things, and everyone's like, look at this guy, look how happy he is to be with that celeb. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do have kind of a shit-eating grin on my face over there. Right. And it just, I enjoyed when I lived in LA, but I definitely saw changes that it did to me in terms of like, I like working. I love working, you guys. It's like a disease. And as I found out recently, I really love writing. I didn't realize how much I loved writing until recently. John, me and you talked about that recently. I love writing. And I love when I'm in a position where it's just like I can do the work because I am like passionate about doing something. Even it's hard. Like it's really hard right now. If you were to ask me like what life is like right now, I would not lie. It is really, really challenging. There feels like at times there's like too much to do, and I'm nannying my kids because their nanny disappeared, and I've got sickness in the family, and there's like, it is hard. And I love what I do. So it's easy in these hard moments to do this stuff that I love, because like that's where the focus is on the work. The focus is what I'm building. The focus is on like I have a very, very clear vision of what I am trying to accomplish and why I'm doing it. At some point when I had some taste of success and I was around certain groups of people, I kind of you it's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses. You kind of start like working because you want to make money, or you want to fit in, or you want to impress people. And I'm not acting like I wasn't immune to that. I definitely went through it, but then like I saw how I felt, and I didn't want to be a part of it. It didn't mean that I didn't want to help certain people. I just didn't want to be immersed in that environment. Right. I wanted to be in my own bubble where I could work and do the work, and then allow the output of what I did to help these people. Because I would say after I left LA, I worked with way more big name people than when I was in LA. After LA is when I worked with Tim Ferris. After LA is when I worked with Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn and PayPal, or Eric Schmidt, who's the CEO of Google, right? Like a lot of like the bigger name things, but like I was in such a better headspace and
you did read the podcast?
Yeah, for first 2 years of Masters of Scale.
Yeah, that was a great show. I enjoyed that for a while.
That was fun.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you feel all of the work that you've done over the years, some of it's been very, very successful. Do you feel like you've been adequately compensated for it? And that could be financial or otherwise.
Yes and no. So yes, in that I have enough. No, is that like I think the wealth or opportunity of many of the things that I have created or had my hands very strongly in, the amount that I got from that was probably nowhere commensurate with the amount of work that I put in. So if we are basing payment on a byproduct of like how much work did you do, how much money did it generate, how much of that did you get, I don't think it's even close to enough. If it's from a perspective of like, do I have enough to put a roof over my kids' house? Do they have far too many toys? Does my wife have lots of wonderful things? Do I have a beautiful home? Yeah. I've made enough to be proud and feel that I haven't been wronged. I haven't made enough to feel that it was commensurate with the work that I did.
What would you have done different, if anything, in order to tighten that up?
Probably negotiated some things differently. And, everyone from my dad to brother Jordan, who, John, who, works with me, would say that I am very almost like too patient and understanding with people because that's just my nature. And it can definitely put me in situations where maybe it makes me a good person, but doesn't make me a great business person.
Right.
There's lots that I can learn about running a business still, and I still learn
What
to this day. And it's something that I struggle with. I'm very competitive when it comes to work. I'm not truly ruthless when it comes to like negotiation and stuff
oh,
like
you
that.
need to be ruthless, but
You can have more firm boundaries on
yeah,
certain
it's a
things.
good way to say
And
it.
I'm also like more willing to take chances, right? Like I worked with Ladder, a supplement company, and I over indexed probably on how much equity I took in that compared to salary because of my confidence in it. And
Mm.
it didn't do poorly, but it didn't do anywhere as well as I thought it was going to do. So there was a lot of money left on the table in that particular situation.
So Ladder, for anybody who doesn't know, Ladder was started between Arnold Schwarzenegger, Cindy Crawford, uh, who was
LeBron
LeBron,
everybody
James,
right?
involved in that?
Lindsey
LeBron
Vonn.
James, yeah,
Yeah.
LeBron. Oh, and Lindsey Vonn. That,
Yep.
that was the four. And so you took equity in that over salary.
Yeah.
Didn't you have to jump back in and become CEO
I took over for a
of that at
short
one
period of
point?
time where they got rid of the executive team and I moved my family for 4 months to Los Angeles. And they wanted me to stay out there. And I said that was not going to happen. That was short term. It was also an opportunity. My wife had wanted to redo our kitchen on our main floor. And I was like, I don't want to live through that. Here's a trade. We're gonna move the kids to LA for 4 months. We're gonna redo the home, and then we will come back. And we did, and the home was not done. And it was that was no fun to live through. The ladder was. I mean, we could talk a whole podcast
Well,
about ladder.
I want to talk about Ladder a little bit because supplements is something that's always been endlessly fascinating to me. I mean, we talked about this uh, when and Amber and I on a previous show, I think it was last week, about how the fitness industry is interesting to me in that there is literally zero product market fit. You know, a good product is painless, quick, and easy. Fitness is painful, takes a long time, and is hard. And as a result, you know, you have the supplement industry, which is worth many times more than the entire health and fitness industries combined,
Right.
because it has that product market fit. And so a lot of really smart business people in the fitness industry, I think two things happen. One is that you have a lot of people who make it in the fitness industry. I joke, I'm like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, because it's just such a hard industry. And so you see this disproportionate amount of people who make names for themselves in the general business world who come from fitness. And I think that's because you just have to be so much better to do well in fitness than you do in a lot of other industries. But what you also see are a lot of people who are smart who go to supplements,
Right.
because they realize that, hey, I can have a small piece in this huge pie and make a huge go of it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I do think that there's probably a supplement brand in my future at some point. But I'm curious why you went the direction you went with Ladder. You went super upscale, you went super lab tested, you went super high performance. Why the hell would you do that?
Some of it was because we had to, and some of it was because it was like a real story. So the story of ladder is, I've known Arnold, as you mentioned, for a while. And LeBron cramps up in the finals many, many years ago, and it's a bad look. And in the offseason, he just like doesn't want this to happen again. And Arnold and LeBron share the same family office, right? Same money manager. So, I get connected with LeBron's
Amazing.
team. Yeah. Or
It's
this is
hilarious.
like what's the story? This is the way it happens, right? Like
Yeah,
people
like
with
this
lots
is
of money
like
that
there's one Jew behind it that manages all of their money. Is basically what you're saying. you
I
don't
feel
need to
uncomfortable,
say
John.
you don't need to say that his last name starts with gold, but his last name starts with the word gold. I get it.
and
Oh my
so
God.
I I'm not gonna say it, but like blink twice if it's accurate.
Should I tell the
I
podcast listeners what your eyes are doing now?
yeah
He's blinked 5 times, you guys, for those listening
yeah,
that can't see.
and it's I get called in and I asked to help out because the supplement industry is a dirty industry, and the thing that
Yeah.
LeBron can't do is have a anything dirty, right? You can't be tainted. And you also you want to do it the right way, right? Like this is LeBron, one of the greatest, if not the greatest athlete of all time, right? So it's just you work with someone, and I'm NDA'd every which way. When I say no one knew, but my wife, and I was going to tell my kids about it, no one knew. And I did this for several
Nobody
years.
knew what? That you were going to be involved?
That I was creating. It started as me just
You formulated the stuff.
Yeah, I formulated stuff for LeBron, not to create ladder, right?
Right. Okay.
I created stuff just to help LeBron. End of story. That was it, right? This was the double secret probation mission, help his camp out, to give him something, help with his nutrition, and a story. And then, it becomes one day, well, LeBron likes this stuff and he's using this stuff. And, a lot of guys in the team can't find supplements to trust, can't find supplements that they like. Supplement industry is wild, wild west, right? Mm-hmm. It truly is. So it's can you create a business infrastructure for this? And the original plan for Ladder is much different than what it became. It, talk about getting away from people and experiences and creating a machine. The goal was I kind of wanted to make it a content hub that eventually you would add in verticals. The first one being a supplement. Don't come out with a supplement brand because it just feels like a money grab. Come out with something that is truly designed to make people better, build community. A lot of the playbook of what I wanted Ladder to be is kind of what we're doing with Arnold's Pump Club right now. I'm not sure if we're ever going to do supplements in that space, but it's just establish value for people in a place where it's difficult to find valuable information that you trust in the fitness space.
I mean, your background has always been media.
Always been media. And it's I feel I'm really good at telling stories. I feel I'm really good at marketing if I have good assets to work with. And then if you build up a passionate base, I think it's very, very easy to sell to people as long as you continue to deliver on providing them with value that they find valuable. I don't think this stuff is overcomplicated. It's just hard to execute. And it's becoming more hard to execute, as John and I talk about it all the time on the side, with all the noise and distribution. It's not easy to do, but it's not a complicated model of how you win people over. Right. So I come up with all these products and I come up with the infrastructure, but then you get a lot of big names involved. You get a lot of very smart people. You start dreaming big. And then you have this other layer of if it's going to be authentic, LeBron has to take it. And if LeBron's going to have to take it, this stuff has to be tested because there is no universe where he can fail a drug test. Right. Yeah. There's no, because what happens when athletes fail drug tests? What is the number one thing they do? They blame the supplement they didn't know. LeBron can't blame his own supplement company. It's truly double jeopardy. And I joke, I'm if LeBron never fails the drug test, you're finding me at the bottom of the ocean, right? It's just it can't happen. So how do you end up having to do this super high end? Because you have to. And you also, and I deluded myself into thinking people would care. Because you start looking
that's why I wanted to ask, because when I saw this coming out, I mean, I had known that you were doing it for a little while. You and I didn't know each other as well at that point, but you had told me, I don't remember why. But I knew that you were involved in it, right? And I saw it come out, and I was just who's going to buy this? It's not much more expensive.
And there's lots of reasons for that. And part of it is people didn't even know what the product was, right? You had all these big names, and LeBron and Arnold and Cindy and Lindsay, and it was kind of Avengers, but people were what is Ladder even selling? And that's a terrible thing to hear. And we heard it a lot. People were what is, have you heard of Ladder? Oh yeah, it's someone Arnold and Cindy and everything. It was but people didn't know what it was. So from a marketing and branding perspective, we did not nail it at all. And then there was also just an assumption, which was partially mine, right? I believed that this would cut through the noise, and I was wrong, or maybe the timing was wrong, or maybe the execution was wrong. But I believe that people will care, because the more that I dug into, when you create a supplement for one, it's pretty simple. When you create a supplement for the masses, you start to see how messed up, because you start going to all these distribution places and manufacturers, and you see how people make the secret sauce, and you're oh my goodness. This is terrible and disgusting, and how
that's the one that influencer on Instagram said that
and it wasn't just supplements, because they were chocolate. There's a brand of chocolate I will never eat again. I'm not going to dog them here because I don't want to get sued, because I saw where it was, and it was literally created next to a great way of ever creating something is check out the bathrooms at the manufacturing place.
Yeah.
Those places aren't spotless, just run, or there was no security, anyone could run into these places and pour whatever you want. And you start realizing it's crazy, and then you start realizing even the bylaws are fundamentally designed to make it so that it's easy to lie. Like, for instance, like whey protein concentrate can be anywhere from 30% to 80% protein. But you are not obligated to say whether you use the 30% pure or the 80% pure. You just have to put the gross amount of protein weight, even though the digestible amount might only be 30% of that. You can create a vegan product, a vegan amino acid product, where when you see where the amino acids are coming from, they're coming from duck feathers. And like you start looking at this and you're like, there's a whole story here and it's crazy and no one's doing this and it's really expensive. One of my marketing campaigns is I wanted to tell people that we were spending like 7 figures to test this stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to be blatant. Like, we are spending big money because we're not just like testing the final product. We're testing the raw ingredients. We're letting them sit.
You needed to scare people away from the other stuff.
Right. Like, I wanted to, like, you have to buy the raw ingredients. You got to do a certificate analysis and test it. You got to then let it sit to make sure like nothing's growing on it and test it again. You got to blend it, put it together, test it again internally. And then you got to go send it to NSF so they can verify that A, there's no dangerous toxins and metals in there, or B, that like what is on the label is actually in the product. Because what people don't realize is this, the law, when people say like, oh, supplements aren't governed, they are governed by the FDA. But the FDA states that supplement companies have to self-govern the veracity of what is on an ingredient label. So if you say there's 20 grams of protein, or you say there's 150 milligrams of caffeine, unless you get it third-party verified, the only thing to say that there's actually that amount is your word. And if someone blows the whistle on you, the first course of action is getting a letter saying, please change the formula. They don't shut you down immediately. And it takes forever for the FDA to find these people. And it was just like, oh my goodness, like, why is anyone trusting anything? And to me, the goal wasn't to become the only supplement company. The goal was to convince people that there's only one type of supplement you should buy, and that is the ones that are third-party verified. Now, you can choose any one of these third-party verifications, but if not, you have no way at all of knowing if what they say is on the label is in the product. And if you just did that, right, if there are only like, there are a couple like 100 products in like the millions of SKUs that are out there, if you just go ahead, right, and create this inception of I'm only going to look for these products, all of those products elevate, right? And everything else goes by the wayside, so the people who are spending the extra money would fundamentally win.
So here's the company that I want to build with you.
Yeah, like, we didn't do that well. We didn't tell that message well. And a lot of it got hid behind the star power. But then at some point I do wonder, like, did it fail and do people not care, or did we not get the message out the right way? Because I can't go back, like, me as a health consumer, even if it's got like all this, I can't buy a supplement anymore that doesn't have one of these 3 labels on it, because I know. And like, we weren't willing to be brash enough to be like, the whole industry is a freaking dumpster fire. You shouldn't trust this. Like, yeah, we've got deep pockets because we need to, because like, if LeBron fails the drug test, he's screwed. And like, that's really brash. But like, a part of me always wonders for the work. And there's the other part of me that, like, do people just not care? Do people see that they would not be on the shelves at Target, at Walmart, if it wasn't safe? And that's what people think on a certain level, but it's definitely not safe.
So here's the supplement company that I want to start with you at some point in the future.
Okay.
I want to go the other way. The entire other way. And I want to just be completely honest that this supplement is just okay. It's fine.
Are you going to call it just okay supplements?
No, I'm going to call it pretty good protein.
Pretty good protein.
And then I'm going to call it good enough greens.
You should trademark those, because someone's taking that. Those are great names. I am obsessed with great names. Those are great names.
They're pretty good names. And the entire idea behind them is, this isn't the best. But neither is that other shit you're taking. You know that's true. You know that you don't know what any of that shit means anyway. Let's be honest with ourselves. You know how you know you can trust me? Because I'm telling you that this isn't the best. I'm telling you that this is good enough. Right? You're not some high-performance athlete. You're not LeBron. Look, I worked with LeBron James. I literally formulated his supplements. Okay? I'm the guy who did that. Here's the NDA he made me sign that has now since expired. Okay? I know what goes into that. You're not him. You don't need that. You're Harry. You're 43 years old.
Are you saying that's his name, or
You
is this
go
a
to the
description of
gym
the person?
twice a week.
You're a very hairy individual.
Your name's Henry.
Okay,
You
all
go
right.
to the gym twice a week.
So Henry's Harry. I get it.
You don't do shit any other time. Your diet's awful. And you need a little bit more protein. Here,
You're like a-
drink this.
You're like a
That's
warm
it.
hug. You are just a warm hug.
That's it. And then on the website in huge letters, the tagline is, yes, we use artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
John's going
Because
the average Joe's gym route from
just
dodgeball.
go in the exact
I like
opposite direction, because it's so obvious that all of that stuff is actually like the 80-20 of what matters.
Right.
Why don't we just call it out and be like, yo, if you're like a high performance athlete, like this isn't for you. But it's like, I mean, this is what I did with Quick Coach with my software. It's like, I know that 90% of trainers don't need something that has crazy robust automation and all of this bloated code.
Right.
And so, A, it's ridiculous for you to pay for it. B, it just causes it to break more often. Like, ours doesn't have any of that. And as a result, it's blazing fast, it works, it's easy to use. And it does everything you need. It just doesn't have all that other stuff that you don't need.
Right. You're eliminating the feature creep, which is a big problem of so many products.
So there you go, Adam. This is the business that you're doing. I want to talk about your new book.
I would love to talk about it.
You Can't Screw This Up. Why Eating Takeout, Enjoying Dessert, and taking the stress out of dieting leads to weight loss that lasts. That's mouthy.
Big promises. Huge.
Why the tagline? Walk me through the different bits of the tagline and why you decided on those specific examples. You want me to read through them one by one?
No, I got it. I can boil it down to three things. So I think the problem for most people isn't like, can I like lose weight or gain muscle? It's how can I sustain it for a long enough time that I'll actually see results that last, right? Okay. Most people are like, oh, it's so like hard to figure out. Not like, it's actually not hard to figure out how to lose weight. Most people who go on a diet like lose weight when they initially start, but then like they burn out or they quit or they gain it back. So the problem isn't weight loss in and of itself. The problem is that, you know, as you talked about with like the lack of product market fit, like a lot of the things that we need to do, we think make us miserable. And I would argue that like, I would challenge you on that. Now, if you want to become like razor lean shredded, yeah, you're going to be pretty miserable eventually on that journey. If you want to be healthy, if you want to be fit, if you want to look good, I don't think it has to be such a painful process at all. I think what stands in the people's way are this idea of like the complexity of these plans, the cost of the plans, and the convenience of them.
Conventional diets, you're saying?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So we have the complexity, cost, and the convenience.
Okay.
And those three things undercut our ability to build habits and be successful. So conventional diets, I would argue, not all of them, but the majority and the ones that are most popular care more about almost breaking you mentally so that you can keep on buying in, because it is a vicious trick where they will put you on something extreme where you are going to see some result because it's so extreme, but it's so unsustainable that at some point it will stop working. And the cruel trick is when it stops working, you think it's because you couldn't do that anymore, not that what they had you do in the first place was just like never going to work. So you associate your success with the extreme rather than the failure with the plan you were put on in the first place. And it makes sense because like, you and I know that like if you help people out, it's like the best business in the world. If you make people better, they will buy from you and buy repeatedly and they will trust you. But a lot of the fitness industry is like we have to keep on breaking people to get them to buy because like where's the repeat purchase? And the diet industry thrives on this. It thrives on finding a new villain over and over again. Many people have written about this. Diet books are formulaic of finding a new villain. It doesn't matter whether it's protein or fat or carbs, right? You've written about, I've written about it. It's inflammation. It's the hormones. We always have a new villain to blame. And we're going to do something super freaking extreme where we're going to add one thing new and remove something, and everything is going to change. And you're going to do it, and you're going to believe, and you're going to want to buy in. But you're going to fail because it's not designed for long term. But more importantly, what happens on all of these plans is we are conditioned to believe we're going to screw up. This book was originally not called You Can't Screw This Up. That title came out of a test group of 500 people that I put through this book. So if there's one thing I've learned from writing books, it's A, get people to write it, B, put people through the program, and then let enough time pass so you can see if the behaviors are sustainable. People finished this more than a year ago, the test program, because like I couldn't write the book without knowing that the things that I gave them were sustainable. Right? That's my social responsibility.
So there's a plan in the book.
There's a plan in the book.
So you would people go through the plan in the book.
And
was the book a hard sell to the publisher?
It was impossible. So
Why?
I can tell you the story. So the book, I couldn't get any. Came up with this idea in 2014 after Engineering the Alpha, because you put out Engineering the Alpha. It's a best-selling book. People do it, but then you get a lot of feedback that it just stops working, and you do have this like.
It was intermittent fasting based.
Yeah, you end up having this really difficult moment where you're like, shit, like I thought I wrote a good book, but it didn't help people. And you start looking around, and like, yeah, a lot of the diet books are pretty shitty, but like there's a lot of good ones out there, and no one can sustain these behaviors. So the initial premise in 2014 was, why is it that diet books are designed to be short-term fixes, long-term failures? That was I was originally going to write it like a rich dad, poor dad, like what good dieters know, bad dieters know.
Right.
It takes me 3 years to put together.
That's a good book. Fit Dad, Fat Dad.
Yes.
That's a good book. That's a great book title.
I go through, write it down. Write it down.
Amber, don't post this episode.
Yeah.
Nobody can know.
Yeah,
Sorry, Adam.
You can get it. You can grab the URL and you can own it. And it took 3 years to do this proposal. I sent it to my book agent, and he's like, "This is terrible." And he's a great book agent, but it was really terrible. I didn't have it, and it took more time to write this. And there are a lot of different things along the way that
you wrote the book, or you wrote the proposal. Sorry,
the proposal. But the proposal had like many chapters. Like when I do a proposal, it's like I want like the plane is already taken off, right?
Right.
It's like, and you have to, because that like it puts you in a position to write a better book.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I finally figure this out, and I have like all these moments of inflection that give me clarity on what this book needs to be, and really it's more of this book about how like people are broken mentally, and that's why they failed physically, right? This like the expectation becomes screwing up. But I didn't understand the title of the book just yet. I'm trying to sell this thing, and originally I wanted to call it The Comfort Zone. Because I feel that
you missed out on that one.
Still on the URL, or we could, which is funny because I reference a lot of different authors in this book. You know, Michael Easter is one of them. I love Michael Easter. He wrote the book The Comfort Crisis, which is a phenomenal book.
It was so good.
So good. Well, Michael Easter is like a younger, better reporter version of like me. He was my follow-up. He followed me at Men's Health, and he's such a good journalist. I would be angry if I didn't just like him as a human so much. Like
I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last year or two as well. We chat on the phone.
Tremendous. And, he's tremendous. And Michael's work is cited in the book. And a lot of people think like, oh, I was going to write this book, The Comfort Zone. One chapter is still called The Comfort Zone. And it actually combines with Michael's theory, which is that, you know, so many diets are all about like, well, you need to leave your comfort zone. Like you die in comfort. Not exactly, right? So like this is why science does exist, to give us a roadmap and a path to show us what works. And there's a beautiful like inverted U curve called the Yerkes-Dodson curve that looks at like the amount of stress that allows you to thrive from a performance standpoint, right? And at one end is like no stress at all. This is like no one's challenging you, stay on your couch, it's fine. You're not going to get better with that mentality. At the other end is these very, very high stress, high complication, and you actually don't see people thrive. And this is most diets. It's stress about your, you know, when you're going to eat, how many meals, your macros, how many times you're working out, your inflammation, where your CGM, so you know if like you're getting a glucose spike. Make sure you're hitting the cold tub on the sauna, and here's your 12-part morning routine, and don't forget your 17-part evening routine, right? All of this is so much stress, and it's also at the same time, oh yeah, by the way, never eat takeout food, never touch dessert, Never sip on alcohol, because if you do that, your body's going to fall apart. Sugar is toxic and you are going to die. And if that's the environment that we live in, it is very naive of us to think that people aren't going to walk around when they start anything and think they're going to screw up. So I write this book wanting to be the comfort zone. Publisher ain't having it. Not at all. And I'm like, I'm not going to get a book deal from anyone. Like, there's just, it was hard. It's part of the reason why I became so emboldened to write this book. Because then I start talking to everyone. I see like all these really smart people too, who like, man, it's going to get me like emotional, like who should be writing books and getting opportunities and getting paid well. And like, no one's getting an opportunity because I saw the same thing. You know, guys, I've written before this like 8 books. I've had New York Times bestseller. I've ghosted New York Times bestsellers. And like, I go there and I pitch this idea, and it's like, guys, like 3/4 of our nation is overweight or obese. People are burnt out. They're stressed, and they're like, okay. And they're like, but what's the hook? And I'm like,
how are we going to sell this book?
Yeah, I'm like, the hook is that people are unhealthy. People are unhealthy, and we're making them believe they have to go to these extremes. And like, oh, that's so good. But what's the hook? And no one wanted it because I wasn't going to like point at that one thing. So I sat there and, sorry, publisher, I agreed to a title that I knew that I was not going to submit. So the original title of the book is The Takeout Diet, because one chapter does teach people how to eat takeout and coexist with it, because I would argue that part of the problem is we teach people to fight against our environment that we're not going to change, right? Everyone's like, when's the food environment going to change? There are billions of dollars in big food, and I'm not saying all big food is bad. I'm just saying the food environment ain't changing. So, you know, when I read these books and they're like, here's what you do when you go to a restaurant. Rule number 1, never order the bread basket. Rule number 2, never order dessert. Rule number 3, never drink alcohol. Rule number 4, when you get your meal, cut it in half and ask your waiter to put it in a bag and eat the other half later. And I'm like, goes to a restaurant and eats this way? And the answer is
this was all in my next book, Fit Dad, Fat Dad. So you're saying I should cross this out?
Repetition is the way to get messaging across, John. That's how we do it. It is, you know, and I'm like, this is silly, because again, what we think it takes for us to be healthy, not shredded, what it takes for us to be healthy is not so painful, but we are told that we are frail, that we don't have resiliency, that our bodies will fall apart. And if you do these things, you're an unhealthy, terrible person. So the wellness industry is one that is ripe with shame and guilt and fear. And you see it all across social media. Fear. And then we're surprised when people like freak out or catastrophize things. So I agreed to do the takeout diet because that got me the book deal. I was going to submit it as the comfort zone. And then with this group of 500 people, literally every single week, even the people who are having success are like, I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to screw this up. I know I'm going to mess this up. And it was right in front of me, because what would change things for people, I'd be like, you can't screw this up. And they're like, shut up. I'm going to screw. What do you mean I can't screw this up? And I'm like, well,
where do you think that comes from? Do you think they've tried and they've failed beforehand?
I asked, guys, managing a group of 500 people was a beast, but it was the best thing I've ever done. I asked all these people, because they're like DMing me, and I'm like, why do you think you're going to screw this up? And there are 2 things that became very, very clear. Number 1 is that they have been trained to believe that one little misstep is a gigantic error, right? So they've been trained to believe that when they have dessert, or when they miss a workout, or when they can't have their vegetables, that it's terrible. And when they have that moment where they think it's terrible, one of 2 things happens, right? 1, they get a case of the fuck-its, and they're just like, forget it. I'm not going to work out. I've screwed up. Why does it even matter? Or 2, they compensate. They think they screwed up. You didn't, right? The whole point of this book is that, like, 1, you can't screw this up. Is like, it's a plan that makes it's easy. I want to progress people, right? And I'll talk about that in a second. And like, the screw up is not these things that we think are mistakes. The screw up is us catastrophizing those very, very normal behaviors, right? The things that we can tolerate. Now, if you're going to be a bodybuilder who needs to go on 3% body fat, your tolerance for error is much lower, and you still even have some margin for error. But when you're the average person who just wants to be healthier, or lose 10 pounds, or have energy, our margin for error is actually quite significant. But what we can't do when we allegedly make mistake is just like go to more extreme behaviors, which make us feel worse, which then like cause these maladaptive behaviors. So that's
Let
one.
me
One
let
is
me
that,
ask
like,
you let me ask you
yeah,
this. Now that you've told the story of the long story of like why this book was so important and how the publisher kind of fought it in a sense. Why then? Why did you not self-publish it? Why did you decide to go still push conventionally published for this book? And this leads into a bit bigger question, which goes into just how you kind of see the entire media field kind of breaking down now, because social media allows people to build their own platforms, which you've done, which you've helped other people do. Um, and you might have been the first media person to discover me way back in the day. I know you were the first to discover a lot of people. And there's still obviously unquestionable benefit of being discovered or featured or highlighted by publication, getting publishers and stuff. And so my first part of the question is, what are those big benefits? And the second is, like, what can somebody do to be the person that gets highlighted? Because, like, it's your job in the media to find great people, but everybody's out there saying, like, even people ask me, they're like, how did you find your literary agent? I've been pitching people for years. I'm like, I don't know how to pitch a literary agent. Like, they approached me. But I don't know how to pitch one or how that even works. I think it's a thing.
yeah. So I feel there's like 4 questions here. You want to know
There's a lot of questions in there.
why I went with a traditional
Well,
publisher?
let's start there, because at that point, especially in 2014, you had a fair bit of momentum going for you, and you had a lot of people in your corner as well.
Well, I wasn't even at a point where I could pitch a publisher because it wasn't good enough. Right? So part of it, like, why didn't I go out? Well, I was going to go, maybe I would have self-published in 2014. That's a great hypothetical, because my mindset of what I'm hoping to achieve with this book is probably, yeah, I wanted to write this book. This book is really important to me because it's a message that you don't hear very often in a mainstream published book.
Right.
So the question of why this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. One, I needed to write this book because I love writing, and I haven't seen anyone tell this story. And then, like, if you know anything about me, and my wife could validate this better than anyone, when someone tells me that, like, I can't do something, and sometimes this definitely bites me in the ass, I need to do it. So my wife will actually manipulate this all the time to be like, oh, you can't go ahead and wash all the dishes for the rest of our marriage. You couldn't possibly do that. I don't know the last time that I didn't wash all the dishes, because I've been tricked. I'm so easily tricked. I wanted to write this book because I don't see people, like, touching on these topics in the way that I wanted to do, and I truly enjoyed writing it. I wanted to do it with a traditional publisher because, like, there was an editor that I really wanted to work with. And I will say about this book, it is the best editorial experience I have ever had. Editorially, it was just like, it truly challenged me as a writer. And it's like, you will see throughout my career, I've always gone in situations where there's something I want to, like, almost take. It's a little bit selfish from other people. Like, I have aligned myself with other people that where I see that they know something or do something, and I want to absorb it. I want to learn from them. And I feel there's so much more that I can learn as a writer. And could I have gone out and, like, hired someone? Yeah, but, like, this editor Cassie, I wanted to work with her. So I was kind of like eyeing her. I've said this, and
That's
I've proven it throughout 15 years. I get great joy out of elevating people who I think deserve the spotlight. And I'm going to continue to do this with Arnold's Pump Club, where, like, if I can build a platform and then elevate people, like, we win out as a society. The thing that pains me maybe as much as anything is that, like, we can make more of a dent in this struggle of wellness if, like, the right people are highlighted and we give people the right tools. But oftentimes the wrong people are getting the spotlight. And we could talk about that all day, because, like, social media doesn't necessarily reward the best people. It rewards the people who know how to grab attention. And those things rarely align, right? The boring
rewards
stuff.
the best entertainers.
Yeah. It's just not. At some point, though, if we are truly to win this war, someone has to write a book like this that isn't sensationalized, that is successful. And it might not be me. I don't know. I received a lot of friction and resistance, and it's like, there's enough of, like, a sensational side, but there's not a lot that, like, jumps off the page when you look at what most bestsellers are. But if there's anything I truly hope it does, that I hope that, like, it inspires other people to, like, I don't care if you get a shitty book deal. someone has to work with one of these big publishers, have a best-selling book that makes the other publishers go like, oh, this thing can work. Because it hasn't worked for so long. So like the part of it is that like people know the easy button of how to get a book deal is to write something crazy. The other part is like publishers are like, show me a comp. Because I've seen this. I've worked with all of the big publishers, right? Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, like you name it, right? I have worked with all the big ones. And like, show me the comps of a book like this that has been really successful, and I'll give you a good book deal, but you can't do it. And there's this part of me, and I remember talking to my wife about it, and I'm just like, man, am I going to take like kind of a crappier book deal to, and again, respect to my publisher, but like compared to what I've made before, I've had huge book deals that are like really in the top tier. And this was not a huge book. I'm very satisfied, but it's like, I saw that and I was like, why not me? Why not try like be crazy enough to get all the people who are doing this the right way and have a book, and then like they have the comp. You can't screw this up as the comp that like I can do a book on this topic and do it. And I don't know if it will work. And it's just like, it sounds like too crusade, but it's so true because it's like, because there are other books that I want to write that I know won't be done if I don't open this door or someone else doesn't open this door. And it's like, if you don't challenge that establishment, so what? So maybe if I can like leverage the people I know, maybe I can leverage the relationships to get a best-selling book about like changing your self-perception, about eating takeout food, about not catastrophizing this stuff. Does it fundamentally change the publishing? Maybe not. Maybe that's like too ambitious to like, oh, that's a really nice thought. It might not. Or maybe it does, right? I dabble in a lot of different spaces, and I know how like industries are such pendulums. It really doesn't take much for something to swing, but you do need a big hit to do it. And when you talk about like my ego, there's enough of my ego to think that I could be the person to do it. There's not enough of my ego where I need the whole world to know who I work with or what I do, but there's enough ego for me to like take on those ambition projects where it's like, okay, like you guys don't think that this could be like a bestseller. You think it might be a good book. Let's go make it a bestseller and see if it happens.
Yeah. Well, you and I connected, I don't know, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, on the same topic, but how we're feeling very similarly in that really at this stage of our lives, of our careers, it's like we just kind of are driven to write. Kind of driven to write books. And I'm the same way. I mean, you've got a hell of a lot going on. I've got a lot of, I think 4 businesses. I don't even know, Amber, how many businesses? 4 businesses? Something like that. But it's a part of me feels guilty by putting so much more effort into the book that I'm writing than really any of the businesses. And it's like, it's so glaringly obvious that this is where I should be focusing my time as well. So I'm going to give you another plug for the book, and then I want to sign off with something that a mutual friend of ours told me about you real quick that I think sums you up. So for anybody, I haven't got my copy yet, but I'm looking forward to it. It is in the mail. It's called You Can't Screw This Up: Why Eating Takeout, Enjoying Dessert, and Taking the Stress Out of Dieting Leads to Weight Loss That Lasts. This is Adam Bornstein. He's Born Fitness on Instagram, on Twitter. Are those the main places for you?
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, Adam's been behind and in charge of and responsible for just some of the best, some of the biggest pieces of media in health and fitness in the last decade. I mean, I don't say that lightly. There's a lot of stuff, I'm sure, even that I missed that you've been behind that I don't even know about. But when you start to hear these names, I mean, LeBron James, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tim Ferris, it's like you'd have a pretty hard time finding bigger things that you were a part of. So it's been fun. Anyway, I want to end this with, so I reached out to Daniel Ketchell. I reached out to Ketch, who's Schwarzenegger's chief of staff. And I just asked him whether there were any stories or anything that he thinks that people should really know about you. And so here's what he said, and we'll end it at this. He says, despite being the busiest guy I know, Adam still has a great family life. And I think that that's pretty special. So Adam, my friend, thank you for being here, dude.
Thank you for having me.
Uh,